that AI can be a better a better judge of precognitive remote viewing transcripts than humans. In other words, the AI is getting significant results where the human judges aren't.
Julia, it's been 11 years since we last spoke. We had great conversations about parapsychology, psi research, topics I love. I'm a little bit of a skeptic, but I love talking about it and learning about it. And I've really not terribly followed the field since then, somewhat. But I'd love you to catch me up. What have I missed in these 11 years since we last spoke about? What's going on?
Well, the field's getting pretty exciting. The part of it is that the more graduate students get interested in the field, the less I think their advisors are telling them not to go into it. and so new minds are coming into the field, and new methods are coming into the field. And most recently, I've been working with Damon Abraham and Mark Bacuzzi and Adam Curry about on a project in which we're using AI to see if we can make the field even more methodologically robust. So, for instance, one of the things I've been looking at recently is precognitive remote viewing. So, remote viewing is this technical term developed by the intelligence community and the military in the U.S. Back in the day, in the Stargate program, to try to describe getting information that's either distance in time or space or both. And if you take that and you apply it to simply precognition, so getting information from the future, so no one on the planet knows what the target might be at the time you're trying to get the information. The big problem with those kind of experiments is, how do you judge the likeness between what someone draws or writes about as their description of the target and the target that's randomly selected in the future itself? So normally in the past decades, people have used independent judges who didn't know what the target was, and they were given multiple targets, like multiple photos, and they would say, here's what the person drew, or this is what the person described in their session. Which photo is most like this transcript? That has all sorts of problems, because depending on the judge, things could look very similar to this one or the other one, and it's very noisy.
Yeah, just back up a second and give me the experimental design.
Yeah.
So I'm a subject, I'm sitting in a room. What do you have me do?
Yeah, so in this kind of experiment, imagine you're the subject, and what you're going to see on the computer screen is a randomly selected photo. But that doesn't, that will happen in the future, but that doesn't happen until you're done describing the photo. So it's kind of like you have to answer the question before the question is asked.
Okay.
And so now you have to describe sort of what you sense that is in that photo. And so on a piece of paper, a couple pieces of papers, you're drawing things, you're writing down adjectives, you're trying to get a sense of what is in that photo. When you're done, and you hand over your paper to the experimenter, you cannot change it anymore. And the experimenter says, thanks, okay, let's show you the target. Now it's randomly selected. Here it is. It's a picture of a tree. Oh, okay. And you might have all sorts of opinions about the similarity between what you drew and this picture. But what really matters is what an independent judge, who has not seen that this is the actual picture that went with your transcript, thinks about the relationship between them.
And my transcript, I'm totally free. I can use adjectives. I can draw. I can
use song lyrics, make cartoons.
Anything, whatever comes to my mind.
Yeah, it's called a free response paradigm, and it's the most effective paradigm for this stuff, unlike many other kinds of experiments.
And what's the time lag between when I finish doing that? Well, first of all, how long do I get to do that? Is it 10 seconds or is it 10 minutes?
In my experiments, I've because I do them over the internet, I've just given people 2 minutes. But if you were working with real remote viewers, they would probably want an hour or 2 hours to do it. It really depends on who you're working with. I was working with novices.
Okay, that's fine. And then what is the time lag between when the precognitive description is finished and when a random selection of the object is made?
The time lag could be whatever you build in. So it could, in my experiments, it's, 5 seconds. In other experiments, it can be a day, it can be a month, it can be a year.
Okay.
Precognitive remote viewing is excellent when you have people who are skilled at it, regardless of the lag. So it's
So, so basically, that's a comment that the time frame is irrelevant, which would be a natural consequence if it's precognition. It really shouldn't matter if you know the future 10 seconds or 10 millennia,
right.
the same thing.
And it suggests that you're not slogging through space-time to get the information. You have some other way
Yeah.
of getting it, right?
Okay, yeah. So that's if that would be the case, and I'd be skeptical that the data shows that, but that's a separate conversation. But if it would be, I think that's a legitimate conjecture from that data to infer
Right.
that you don't have to slog through space-time. I like that term. You just have access to it immediately.
Right. I like that term too. I think sometimes we think we always have to slog through space time. I don't think we do. So this
and again, and I just want to be very precise.
Yeah.
And so the random choice is by a random number generator, and those are pretty good. They're not perfect, but
right. If
I would
you're
say that,
only doing one of these, and you have a bunch of people coming in and they're only doing one of these, and you're using statistics to determine if people can do this task, the random number generator is even less important, because what you're worried about with a random number generator is that a person is going to learn the pattern.
Yeah.
But if it's just one, it's kind of like whatever. But yes, I like to use true random numbers.
And then how many potential photographs does the random number generator have to choose from?
You want a nice enough pool compared to the number of people that you're testing.
So
you don't want, right? So like in my experiments, I had something like 600 photos, and then I had 300 participants, and so the random number generator was, maybe would give 2 photos to 2 different people, but you don't know who they are.
Okay, but that's good. So if you have 600 to choose from, because some of the original experiments would have 4, images or something, and you have less. But if you have 600, and now you're using AI mechanisms to standardize the correlation between the person's statements and the photograph.
Yeah, the AI can be a better human judge. What we found in a recent paper that's under review is that AI can be a better judge of precognitive remote viewing transcripts than humans. In other words, the AI is getting significant results where the human judges aren't.
And how do you judge that independently?
Because an AI can turn a picture and can turn words into a bunch of embeddings, which are just the mathematical similarity relationships. It's like almost like a word map or word web. So like a map of relationships between the meanings of the things. And so you can actually take that map, and then you can make a map of the photo that's the target, and you can ask about the mathematical similarity between the transcript map and the photo map. And that gives you a number. And you can do that for every, all of the alternative transcripts. All of the alternative targets. And then you could say which one was the highest match, and that would be the winner.
Okay. You'd have to think carefully about, unintended biases built into the mappings and stuff, but it's very interesting research. Quickly, other areas of research other than yours in the field that you'd like me to know about over the last?
Yeah, sorry, I thought we were focusing on.
No, I like your work.
Okay.
I love your work, but I'd like to know a little bit about others as well.
So the field is just getting more rigorous, I think, in all respects, which I think is wonderful. I think there's a bit more of a focus on mediumship. So veridical information about someone who has passed by a medium who is blind to the information about that person. And so that's been really fascinating. I think another area of research that's been fascinating is how do life circumstances or personality traits affect your capacity to have these extended capacities? So, for instance, Kirsten Cameron, who was a dissertation student of mine, she created a really beautiful experiment that showed that people who were better at precognition also had more childhood trauma. And this kind of matched already with what people were saying anecdotally in the field. So you have your gifted people who work with law enforcement or who work with intelligence agencies using psychic capacities. And many of them had very clear early childhood trauma. So
in general, in psi research, your research, the ones you're describing, how do you get replicability? You know, we all know that in psychological experiments, non-psi, all psychology, the replicability rate is pretty embarrassing, something like 40% non-replicable. How do you deal with replicability? And in that case, is there a danger of selection of bodies of data that are statistically valid in themselves, but that's because all the non-statistically valid ones were not considered or were discarded, and you're picking one by itself that is statistically valid to a high degree, but by eliminating all the others that didn't work, that you didn't even do or others did, you're biasing the whole approach.
I think there's two ways, or there's multiple ways. There's two ways that come to mind, though, right now to deal with that. So one way is when you're doing a meta-analysis and you're considering the whole field of research, there's mathematical ways to basically impute or figure out mathematically what missing studies there must be. So you can use those methods, and you should use those methods, and then assume that they exist, but they were never published because they weren't significant or didn't show an effect. And then in your calculations, that ends up reducing the effect size as a result. However, you should do that because it's the most conservative thing to do when trying to understand a field. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to continue showing within a particular lab or in a particular style of experimentation or on a particular psi capacity like precognition, continue showing the effect in different ways and using skilled participants. So many people in psychology experiments just use the people who walk in the door who are like Psych 101 students. So that's fine, and that can show sort of what a general human capacity is. But skilled participants in these areas can be harder to come by, and you have to select for them. However, you can repeatedly show that these people are good at this at a rate above chance. And that ends up being a more selected way to do it.
So what's your confidence level overall that psi research, that precognition in particular, is a real phenomenon, 0 to 100?
100.
Okay, Julia, it's great to see you. I hope we can continue the conversation and see where it goes before another 11 years.
Yes, please.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like and comment below. You can support Closer to Truth by subscribing. Closer to Truth is now accepting your tax-exempt donations. Please come to closertotruth.com/donate. Thank you very much for supporting us, and thanks for watching.